Ming is a weak and helpless boy who had his home burnt to the ground and his entire family taken from him by the Empire. And several years later, Ming takes over the identity of the son of a prominent family in order to grow stronger and ultimately get his revenge. But before all that, we have to start at the beginning. At this point, Ming has been on the run for 7 years, and he is currently being chased down by several executioners through a forest. As he jumps from tree to get away, one of the executioners is starting to wonder who he really is because an ordinary person wouldn't be able to move so fast. But his boss tells him that even if their target's power is a little above average, he is still only one person, so there's no way he could handle their entire squad in a fight. Eventually, the leader spots some fireworks in the distance, meaning one of his team members have spotted the boy, so he starts heading over to assist in taking Ming down. Ming continues running through the tree branches, but with the fireworks giving away his location, all the executioners are slowly closing in on him, so he won't be able to evade them for much longer. And to make matters worse, this forest is home to several dangerous monsters, so Ming has to be very careful about where he lands. Ming tries to swing back into the treetops, but one of the executioners had managed to get in front of him. So before Ming even realizes what's going on, he gets kicked in the face and knocked back down to the ground. He is now completely surrounded, so the executioners prepare to jump him, but Ming refuses to go down without a fight. So as one of the executioners attempts to stab him, he knocks the guy away and steals his blade before stabbing him in the neck with it. Ming was about to do the same to the other executioners, but all of a sudden, an arrow comes flying at his head, so he's forced to back off for a second. He kicks 2 of the executioners away to create some space, but they keep coming after him. So he parries and dodges their attacks until he finally sees an opportunity to cut them down. Ming thinks he is finally safe, so he bends down and starts looting the guards' bodies to see if he can find anything valuable. However, an arrow suddenly lands next to him, and Ming can tell that it's not normal, so he runs away just before the arrow explodes. Ming looks up to see who was responsible for the arrow, and he is shocked to see 2 warriors from the Ministry of Justice here. The 2 are surprised that Ming was able to recognize them, but it makes things easier since he should already know that encountering them means he won't be able to survive. Ming asks why the Ministry of Justice would come after a law-abiding citizen like him, so the warrior read the charges against Ming. The letter says that 7 years ago, Ming's father committed treason against the emperor, so as punishment, his entire family was sentenced to execution. However, Ming managed to escape his fate somehow, so they are here to finish the job. Ming isn't just going to stand by and let them kill him, so he throws some rocks at the warriors to buy some time, but the archer fires several shots at Ming to keep him from escaping, and when Ming tries to run to safety, he is cut off by the barbarian woman and grabbed by the ankle. She is about to slam him into the ground with all her might, but at the last second, Ming uses a special technique to rearrange the bones in his leg, allowing him to escape her grasp. The archer warns the barbarian to be careful because it looks like Ming has a few tricks up his sleeve and they don't know what he might do next. Meanwhile, Ming is barely able to stand at this point. He is well aware that the barbarian is dangerous, but he gets the feeling that the archer is much more experienced, so he needs to be careful about how he deals with him. But for now, Ming needs to get back on his feet, so he drinks the health he managed to swipe from one of the executioners earlier. The barbarian then charges at him, so he is forced to back away, but he still has to worry about the archer, so he can't create too much distance here. Since he has no other choice, he imbues his blade with some energy as the barbarian lunges at him. And she clearly wasn't expecting him to be so strong, because as their weapons clash, Ming is able to completely destroy her club, and while the barbarian is still confused, he's able to sneak up behind her and stab her in the neck. The archer is enraged by the death of his comrade, so he swears he will cut Ming to pieces even if it's the last thing he does. Ming realizes the archer is using talismans to fight, so he must be a chi cultivator, and Ming knows how terrifying chi cultivators can be, so he is not willing to run the fade. Ming starts running for his life, but the archer isn't letting him escape, so he activates his lightning skill and kicks Ming 100 meters through the forest. Now Ming has been backed up against the edge of a waterfall and he has nowhere to go. The archer lunges forward at Ming, forcing him to jump off the waterfall, but since Ming is going down anyway, he makes sure to take the archer with him. They both end up plunging into the lake below, and once Ming regains his bearings, he tries swimming back up to the surface, but the archer grabs him from behind and tries to strangle Ming. Ming manages to slip free from his grip and gets behind the archer to lock him in its chokehold. The archer begins struggling to free himself and reaches for his blade in an attempt to cut Ming down. But unfortunately for him, his blade was out of reach, so before long, the archer suffocates to death and sinks to the bottom while Ming slowly floats to the top. A little while later, Ming washes up on the shore of the lake, but it looks like he wasn't the only one who washed up here because 2 old men find a badly injured man propped up against a tree. They are very disappointed because the man looks like he had some decent potential as a cultivator, But with that hole in his chest, even an immortal wouldn't be able to save him. The short one says they can't just let the young master of the Bai family die like this when they were tasked with bringing him to the savage ghost sect for his spiritual awakening. The tall one suggests they should just ditch him and run away, but the two of them already took payment from the Bai family, so they get hunted down if they ran away. Not to mention the fact that to take this job, they both swallowed a heart-relaxing pill that will kill them in 6 months if they don't return to the Bai family to give a report. In no uncertain terms, the two of them are screwed, so the tall one fires off a blast in frustration. The man's blast happens to hit a rock which Ming was hiding behind, and as soon as they realize there's a witness, they try to finish him off so he can't tell anyone what happened here. However, as the tall one tries to punch a hole through his chest, Ming subconsciously protects himself with an energy shield, something that shocks the two men because Ming's technique is similar to that of the Bai family. The two of them take a moment to inspect Ming's body, and just as they suspected, it looks like Ming has learned some basic energy control techniques, and his foundation is pretty solid. Moreover, he looks strikingly similar to the dead young master of the Bais, so the two come up with a plan and tell Ming that they will save him, but only under the condition that he lives under a new identity and does as they say. Ming has no other choice. Ming doesn't really have much of a choice, so he agrees to go along with their scheme, and after healing him, the men begin taking Ming to the spirit awakening ceremony. Ming is grateful that the two of them spared his life, but he is worried that if his strength isn't sufficient, then people will find out that he isn't really the young master of the Bai family. The old man assures Ming that he should be alright since the savage ghost sect has no record of his face, and as long as he follows the energy control technique that they showed him, he shouldn't have any problems passing the spiritual awakening exam. Speaking of the exam, Ming still doesn't know what it's about, so the men explain that it's basically a ceremony that allows you to gather large amounts of chi in your body, and when the chi reaches the condensation stage, you can become a spirit disciple, and from there your cultivation can reach even greater heights. The two of them tell Ming that it is a great honor to be allowed to participate in the ceremony, so he should be grateful. But if the spiritual awakening is so amazing, then Ming asks why the two of them haven't awakened their spirits yet. The men look at each other with a bit of sadness in their eyes and tell Ming that you can only awaken your spirit before the age of 20, and it costs an astronomical amount to even register, so old folks like them will never get a chance like that. On top of that, only then the 5 major factions know the secret techniques to succeed in a spirit awakening, so it is very dangerous for regular people. They eventually arrive at the exam site, so the men drop Ming off at the entrance, but before he heads in, they try to convince him to take a heart-relaxing pill, claiming that it will help protect him. However, Ming isn't an idiot, so he knows the pill is really a poison that will kill him if he doesn't fulfill their requests. He asks the men if they really trust him so little, but given the fact that Ming is a wanted criminal in the Empire, they are a little worried that he might run away halfway through the exam. They assure Ming that even if he takes the pill, everything will be alright as long as he succeeds with the spirit awakening, but doesn't really believe them. However, it's not like he has a choice here, because if he doesn't do as they say, they will expose him as an outlaw and he'd be hunted down again, so he swallows the pill and heads inside for the exam. Inside, Ming comes across several powerful cultivators from prominent families, and a lot of people seem to know the young master of the Bai family. Although, all the rumors seem to say that the young master of the Bai family is a useless bastard, so Ming realizes his public image isn't good. Just then, the instructor for the exam, Fang, arrives and he tells everyone that he will be in charge of leading them to the spirit awakening ceremony, so anyone who wants to participate should follow him. All the participants start walking, but all of a sudden, a bunch of them begin to choke. So Ming realizes something is wrong and jumps onto the ceiling to analyze the situation. There are dozens of ghosts picking off the participants, but when one of the participants goes to ask Fang for help, he tells them that this is the savage ghost sect, so they'd better be able to deal with a few specters on their own. Most of the stronger cultivators here are able to defeat the ghosts fairly easily, so it's time for them to move on to the next phase, but along the way, Ming is approached by this guy. He offers to form an alliance with Ming so they can tackle the next phase together, and Ming sees no reason to refuse, so he goes along with the guy's suggestion. Although the guy is a little suspicious, so Ming keeps his guard up. While they are walking through the tunnel, he keeps looking around in case of an ambush, but the guy he formed an alliance with tells him there's no need to worry about anyone sneaking up on him since everyone else has already progressed to the next stage. And anyone that's still in the first stage by now definitely isn't strong enough to be an issue for them. But with that said, there's only a limited number of spots for the next phase, so the man really does intend to betray Ming. He steps back as some purple energy wraps around Ming, and once he is restrained, the guy explains that this is the second stage of the exam, the sacrificial cage. As the name implies, someone needs to be sacrificed here for the other to move on with the test, and unless you're a high-level cultivator, that purple energy will drain your power until you eventually die. Ming is furious and asks the man if he thinks the Bai family will let him live after killing their young master, but the guy says this is just how the game goes. The spiritual awakening ceremony is already dangerous to begin with, so anyone who comes here has accepted the fact that they may fail and die at any point. And besides, the Bai family is on the verge of being expelled, so there's nothing they could do about it anyway. Ming is actually kind of relieved to hear that death is a normal part of the exam because that means he doesn't have to worry about consequences if he accidentally kills someone. He gets back on his feet and begins charging up his energy until he eventually breaks through the energy chains. The man is terrified because he knows the real Bai Kongshin could never pull off something like that, so he figures out that Ming is an imposter. Ming is surprised that the man was able to deduce that much in such a short amount of time, but it's not like it matters because he won't survive long enough to tell anyone the truth. The man is starting to panic, but he doesn't want to die here, so he's getting ready to fight Ming. However, he suddenly feels a sharp pain in his hand, and it becomes very difficult for him to move. Ming reveals that he had poisoned the man in advance the moment they first met because he was worried that something like this might happen. The man lunges at Ming in anger, but in his carelessness, he gets caught by the purple chains and he is completely drained of his energy a few moments later. Ming continues through the tunnel until he eventually arrives at the exit where many other cultivators are waiting. Fang tells everyone that they were lucky to have made it this far, but the true test is yet to begin because this is where they will undergo their spiritual awakening. This arena was specially made to allow several different groups to take part in the awakening at the same time, so they need to prepare themselves. Ming is still a little shocked that over half of the initial participants have already died, but it looks like there are even greater risks with the actual awakening. A few of the participants notice that there are already a lot of people seated inside the energy circles, so Fang explains that those are the members of the Savage Ghost sect who have been nurturing their spiritual energy since childhood. There are 5 circles in total, and Fang reserved 3 of them for the members of his sect, so he tells the rest of the participants that they are going to have to use the leftovers. The participants are outraged because their families paid good money for them to undergo this awakening, so it's not fair for Fang to monopolize a majority of the resources. But Fang doesn't care about fairness at all. He's the one who sets the rules here, and if they don't like how he allocated the resources, then they are free to leave. The participants have no choice but to go along with Fang's orders, so they all squeeze into the final 2 circles and get ready for the spiritual awakening to begin. Once everyone has settled in, Ming notices a beautiful girl sitting across from him, and when she looks his way for a moment, he begins to fall in love. But then he remembers that he is a wanted man who was forced into a potentially deadly ceremony, so love isn't a high priority for him. The girl is surprised that her spiritual charms didn't work on Ming and she is starting to take an interest in him, but there's no time for distractions right now as the spiritual awakening is about to begin. Each pathway is filled with dense liquid energy, so when all the circles have been filled, the formations are activated to enshroud an incredibly dense spiritual energy which they must absorb. Within seconds, several cultivators fall to the ground, unable to overcome the incredible pressure. However, the more skilled cultivators don't seem to be having much trouble. Since Ming is new to the world of cultivation, he is struggling a little, but with the energy control techniques he was taught, he is eventually able to stabilize his spirit. Now all that's left is for him to absorb as much extra energy as possible so that he can open his meridians. While all this is going on, the leaders of the 8 branches of the Ghost sect all meet to watch the progress of the candidates. The sect leader is quite impressive with the performance of the participants this year, but he heard that the other leaders have a few people in mind whom they would like to recruit. He heard that Shu and Lin got into an argument over a particular disciple and even arranged a duel to decide who would get him. Lin pleads her case and reminds the sect leader that she was the one who discovered the Kalin nightmare body, so she has the right to take her as her disciple. All the branch leaders are shocked to find it hard to believe that someone here really has a nightmare body, but there's no reason for them to doubt Lin's testimony because moments later, the nightmare body is manifested right before their eyes. It only has 6 veins at the moment, but with the girl's mass control ability, the sect leader agrees that she would be a great asset to their sect. The sect leader asks Guy if he has his eye on any of their faction's disciples, but Guy tells him he doesn't really want to compete with the rest of them for disciples, so he's fine with choosing a few of the foreign awakeners. The sect leader asks him if he's sure about this, since even if the foreigners manage to awaken, it will most likely only end up with 3 veins, which is relatively low in comparison to the Ghost faction's disciples. Guy is aware of that, but his branch doesn't have as many resources as the others, so all he asks is that if any of the foreigners are fortunate enough to awaken, then the rest of his fellow branch leaders shouldn't steal them away from him. Just then, Lin gets everyone's attention and points to Ming because his cultivation looks like it has the potential to reach the legendary 9 vein. The sect leader takes a look and he is impressed with Ming's energy levels, but unfortunately, That's where his interest ends because he says Ming doesn't know the proper channeling techniques to stabilize his energy absorption, so his body won't be able to handle it. When someone isn't able to handle the energy that they are absorbing, it inevitably leads their entire body to explode, as showcased by the unfortunate people behind Ming. The energy Ming is absorbing is starting to take a toll on his body, so he seals his spirit veins to hold it in, but Guy says a trick like that will only delay the inevitable, so Ming will eventually die. Just then, all of their attention is drawn to another foreign participant, Jai, who has just successfully unlocked the 9-vein spirit, and Guy is rather pleased because he already called dibs on all the foreign candidates, and it worked out well for him. However, all of a sudden, the final branch leader, Lei, shows up and tells everyone that Jai is his nephew, so he's going to take him on as a disciple. He makes the argument that he is already familiar with Jai's thunder attribute, so he would be the best teacher for him. Gui is disappointed that such a talented disciple is being taken from him, but since Zai is Lei's nephew, he agrees to let him go. But he asks everyone to agree that they will let him keep any of the remaining foreign awakeners. None of the branch leaders have any objections, and the sect leader is in support of Gui's requests, so there shouldn't be any more issues for him. However, a few moments later, another participant awakens, and this one absolutely stuns everyone because he surpasses all their expectations. His vein count rises all the way up to 9, but it doesn't stop there. It keeps going until the participant reaches 12 spirit veins, and this is almost unheard of, so Pu quickly reminds everyone that he called dibs first. But the sect leader is sore loser, so he flexes his power and announces that he will be taking that 12-vein participant as his disciple. Gui is dejected, but there's nothing he can do since he doesn't have the power to stand up to the sect leader, so he's forced to just pick a disciple from the remaining candidates. Gui isn't expecting much since after so many promising candidates have already awakened their spirit, it's not likely for another amazing talent to bloom, but he tries to remain optimistic. As he looks out into the arena, he spots Ming still working hard to contain his energy, and Gui is intrigued because he was sure Ming would have exploded by now. The challenge Ming is facing is that he has enough control to manifest 9 spirit veins, but his core isn't developed enough to contain all 9 veins, so he is getting overwhelmed. The usual way to fix this would be to dispel some of the energy to accommodate his core, but Ming doesn't want to give up like that. If his core can't handle all 9 veins, then he decides that he's going to use his spirit power to compress the veins until they fit. No one has ever done something like this before, and honestly, Ming isn't sure whether it will work or not, but he eventually manages to pull it off. The ceremony eventually comes to a close, and the students are told to wait a while so they can be assigned as disciples. Most of the others who manage to awaken got spirit veins that are long and thin, but because of Ming's unique method, even though he only has 3 spirit veins, the veins are massive. A few minutes later, he comes down to take the foreign awakeners that the others didn't want, and he asks his assistant, Shai, to lead them all to his branch. They eventually arrive at a portal where they will officially begin their training as disciples, but immediately after crossing through to the other side, all the disciples faint, leaving Ming as the last one standing. An old man in a chair suddenly speaks up, and he says he's impressed that Ming didn't faint like the others. Ming thinks this must be some kind of trap, but the old man assures him that he's not in danger. The energy inside the temple is just so dense that most newbies can't handle it and faint instantly. Anyway, if they are here looking for techniques to learn, he suggests that they should take the levitation, basic fire, and basic wind spells. Ming accepts the man's suggestion, but he wonders why he is only allowed to use these scrolls. The man warns him that most of the scrolls here are too advanced for beginners, so he had better not do anything reckless. The only ones who have clearance for the highest level of scrolls are the ones that were personally chosen by the branch leaders, so there's nothing Ming can do about it. The old man tells Ming it's his own fault for being a weak 3 spirit veins loser, but then again, he realizes Ming has a lot of mental power for someone who only has 3 spirit veins, so he decides to give him a test. He pulls out a crystal and asks Ming to channel his energy into it so he can assess his strength. But before he does so, Ming can tell that the old man isn't a good person, so he doesn't want to reveal all of his cards yet. He decides to only use 1/3 of his power, but even this is enough to shock the old man. He has never seen such strong mental power in a newbie, and he can tell that Ming will go far as a cultivator, so he offers him a special cultivation technique. The original version was written in ancient Qiming Chinese, but this bamboo version is one that he personally translated. Ming asks the old man if he can see the original version, but the old man gets offended and says Ming would never be able to understand something he personally had to spend years just to translate. He tells him that technique will get him all the way up to the middle stage of mastery with no bottlenecks, something that even the faction's secret technique can accomplish. But if he doesn't think it's good enough for him, then the old man will gladly take it back. Ming apologizes and says he graciously accepts the old man's gift, but before he leaves, the man warns him not to tell anyone about this, otherwise he will have to face deadly consequences. Meanwhile, in a cave near the sect, two of the spirit awakeners are meeting with one another, and one asks the other how many foreign spirit awakeners managed to survive. Aside from the two of them, the others are Zele and the Bai family's young master. But he thinks there's something suspicious about Bai because he is widely known as the useless son who was sent here because his family didn't want to have to deal with him, and someone like this could never survive the spirit awakening. They decide that they need to test him to see if he is really the same person, but they also need to be cautious so they don't accidentally blow their cover. They are here on a mission from the Ministry of Justice, and their job is to infiltrate the savage ghost faction's inner circle, so they can't afford any mistakes. Meanwhile, Ming has locked himself away in a cabin so he can be in his training. He still doesn't trust Old Man Ryan's cultivation techniques, since he doesn't seem like the kind of person to do something out of the kindness of his heart, but he has no choice but to go along with it if he wants to increase his power quickly. A few months go by, and it's time for the new cultivators to return to the main complex for evaluation. Once Ming and the others arrive, they head over to meet with Shi, and Shi asks them how their cultivation is going. The others admit that they haven't made much progress since no one has been guiding them, so they have to slowly teach themselves to improve. They ask Ming how his cultivation is going, and in all honesty, Ming has been doing way better than all of them, but he doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself, so he just tells them that he is struggling as much as they are. Ming looks around and notices that there aren't a lot of people here, so he asks Shai if this is everyone from the Jurain branch, and sadly, yeah, this is all the branch has to offer. Shai explains that this branch is the most neglected out of the 8, so they are lucky that they even get to participate in a tournament like this in the first place. He tells everyone that they need to try and win as many rewards as possible to help speed up their cultivation journey, and their eyes all light up at the mention of rewards. They ask what rewards Shai is talking about, so he says he knows there should be Huyuan pills available that can increase cultivation speed, but aside from that, he's not sure what the other rewards could be. In any case, he tells everyone to do their best because the tournament is about to begin. Shortly after, the branch leader arrives and gives a little speech, telling everyone that the path of cultivation thrives in diligence, so lazy people will never succeed. But just as he says this, the laziest MF imaginable comes crashing out of the sky. This is Zhu, and he is one of the masters here. But he is late because he spent last night drinking and has a massive hangover. Once Zhu composes himself, he warns all the students not to be lazy like him, otherwise he will beat them up. But with that said, the reason he is here is to help assess the students' cultivation levels, and if they manage to impress him, then he is prepared to reward them generously. The students don't seem excited after Zhu's announcement, so he decides to show them what he is offering and summons several gourds. He tells everyone that these are the rewards for performing well in the tournament, and in case they can't already tell, the liquid inside these gourds has the same effect as a Huyuan pill. It increases the speed of one's cultivation and raises their mental power quickly, so everyone is excited for a chance to prove themselves now. The tournament soon begins, and the newbies are set to go up first. Two of the direct disciples under the branch leader, Feng and Chang, are chosen to fight against the 3 new disciples, but they are reminded that this is just a friendly match between fellow disciples, so they have to stop once they've made their point. Ming is surprised that they are having him compete against direct disciples so soon, and Feng seems to be enjoying this whole situation because it gives him a chance to beat down the pathetic 3 spirit vein losers. His comments get the others angry, so they are ready to fight, and they think they should be able to handle Feng since it's 3-on-1, but once the fighting actually starts, Feng absolutely bodies the chubby one. The girl tries to assist him by attacking Feng with her wind blade, but it does absolutely no damage to him, and now that he has turned his attention towards her, he starts charging forward with harmful intent. Ming knows there's no way the girl will survive getting plowed over with such force, so he uses his levitation technique to lift her out of the way so they can all regroup. The leaders are really impressed with Ming's quick thinking, and Guy thinks it's unfortunate that someone as imaginative as Ming only has 3 spirit veins. Feng is annoyed that Ming interfered with his attack, so he targets Ming next, but even though his cultivation is meant to be several times higher than Ming's, he can't keep up with him at all, so all his attacks end up getting dodged. Ming then uses the wind slash technique, but while this version is definitely stronger than the girl's, it's still no match for Feng's brute force, so he smashes through it and charges at Ming again. The others see that Ming is putting up a good fight, so they decide to join in as well and start hitting Feng with wind slashes to distract him, while Ming sneaks in 1 or 2 good hits. The leaders are once again in awe of Ming's adaptability because he is perfectly executing hit-and-run tactics to compensate for his inferior strength. If he and the others can keep this pace, then sooner or later Yu is going to run out of energy and it will be their victory. A few moments later, Yu ends up falling to his knees, and the chubby one thinks this means he has finally run out of energy. But instead of just using his ranged fireball attack, he decides to run into butt-whooping range. And guess what? He is whooped. With the Chabi one down, Yu now targets the girl again and backhands her as if she just served him cold chicken, so Ming is the only one left standing. Yu now charges at Ming, but before he attacks, Ming points out that the technique Yu used to take out the Chabi boy isn't from the Ghost sect. This startles Yu because he is worried his cover might have been blown, and Ming takes the opportunity to punch him square in the chest before immediately surrendering because he knows he can't beat Yu in a fair one-on-one. Yu angrily walks up to Ming and accuses him of cheating by distracting him in the middle of the fight. However, Ming points out that Yu did the same thing when he pretended to be hurt to trick the Chabi one into attacking. Yu turns to the leaders and asks them to grant him a rematch with Ming so he can settle the score with him. However, the leaders tell them to shut up and begin scolding Yu for being so careless because if this had been a real fight, Ming's punch could have seriously hurt him. They tell them to just accept the way things turned out and reflect on his actions so he doesn't make the same mistake again. Yu has no choice but to obey the leader's instructions, but he is now certain that Ming isn't the real Bai, so he is determined to find out what he is hiding. Meanwhile, Ming is also suspicious of Yu because he feels like he has seen his martial arts before. He knows it's not one of the Ghost faction's techniques, but he doesn't remember the details. Guai tells the three that they should rest for a moment to regain their strength, because after this, they are going up against Xiao Feng, and he will be just as tough as Yu was. Feng decides to intimidate them a little, so he begins warming up and uses a wind slash that's so powerful that it scares the other two into quitting immediately. Now Ming is the only one who will be facing Feng, but he doesn't plan to back down, so he tells the leaders that he is ready to begin. Feng is really confident in his abilities, so he says he will be able to defeat Ming with nothing but a single finger. Feng generates an ice spike, which intrigues the leaders because an ice spike is a complex intermediate spell, so he must have worked very hard to master it. Feng launches the ice at Ming, so Ming moves his head out of the way to avoid being hit. However, Feng already planned for that, so he takes control of the ice and redirects it. The other leaders are starting to get worried since the ice spike spell is notoriously difficult to control, so Feng might accidentally end up hurting Ming, but Guy says it's fine since this version of the spell can only cause physical pain. Feng realizes the ice spikes won't be enough to break through Ming's defenses, so he decides to conjure a huge ice wall. This forces Ming to go on the offensive, so he pulls out his weapon and begins attacking Feng. The leaders are greatly impressed with Ming's strength, and they had heard that Ming chose to use the ghost cultivation technique for his training. But while the ghost cultivation technique is by no means bad, it limits the growth of an individual later on, so they think he might have been a little too hasty with his decision. However, Ming never actually used the ghost technique. The technique he got from Ruon is called the Netherbone cultivation technique, and it is very similar to the ghost techniques, so it would be a good cover to pretend that he chose the ghost technique instead. And as long as Ming doesn't reveal too much of his power, there's no way any of the leaders will ever realize that he is really using the Netherbone technique. Ming knows he could defeat Feng if he went all out, but that would be too suspicious, so he decides to let himself lose and intentionally gets hit with the ice spikes, while using the bone shrinking technique to avoid any fatal injuries. After that, he surrenders to put an end to the match. But Yu recognized the bone shrinking technique, so he is now even more suspicious of Ming. With the tournament officially over, the masters announce the rankings and Ming is labeled as an upper middle cultivator, while the others are labeled as inferior. One of the leaders has taken a liking to Ming, so she calls him over and offers to heal his wounds for him. Ming is thankful for her help, but that's not all she has for him. She also offers him 3 shield talismans, and while Ming isn't sure how valuable the talismans are, if it's coming from a master, then he's sure it must be good. The final match of the tournament soon begins, and Master Xin is up against a talisman user, and the man launches several fire talismans at him. Each of those talismans is incredibly destructive, but Xin is able to block them all with his diamond shield. He then uses his summoning technique to raise a skeleton from the ground and send it after the man. Ming is shocked because he didn't know that was possible to summon such powerful ghosts. However, Shai clarifies that the summoning technique only allows you to form master-servant contracts with ghosts at random, so the strength of the ghost is entirely based on luck. And it looks like Xin was very lucky today because he got a white bone demon on his first try, so the man's fire talismans are almost useless against it. The talisman user is starting to get fed up with this, so he pulls out some explosive talismans and sticks them onto the skeleton before jumping away. With this, he is able to completely destroy the skeleton's body, but unfortunately, when dealing with the undead, something like this is never enough to finish them off. The skeleton continues walking towards the man and regenerates its body and continues attacking. The others are amazed by how powerful the summoning technique is, but Shai warns them that it can be a double-edged sword at times. The only reason Xin is so strong is because he obsessed over refining his summons, but because of that, he couldn't focus on his cultivation as much. It is pretty clear that the talisman user can't win at this point, so Gu orders Xin to stop the match. With this, the tournament has officially ended, so Mu congratulates everyone on the progress that they've made and sends them on their way. The other newbies say goodbye to Ming, and he is about to return to his cultivation cabin, but before he leaves, he remembers that his cultivation rate will never outpace that of the leader's direct disciples, so he needs to gain some actual combat experience. Normally, he wouldn't be allowed to use the main compound's training equipment, but since he's already here, so he decides to ask the caretaker to let him use the training simulation. He asks to fight one bone demon, so the caretaker tells him it will cost him 1 spirit stone. Ming has no choice but to pay for it, but it really hurts his wallet, especially since he only earns 5 spirit stones a month as a disciple. He's going to need to find a way to earn more stones later, but for now, it's time for him to train. The bone demon is summoned and immediately strikes. Ming quickly activates his shield talismans to block the attack. He then retaliates with a fireball, but that wasn't enough to defeat the skeleton. The skeleton lunges out of the smoke and tries to stab him, so Ming quickly blocks again. And while the skeleton is stun-locked, Ming manages to punch it hard enough to finally put it down. He is honestly surprised that the shield is so effective, even though he hasn't had the time to refine it yet, but he is even more amazed by how difficult it was to defeat a regular bone demon. He is now certain that he needs to learn the summoning technique, but before that, he needs to take a bath. Ming heads home and hops into a bath, but while he's busy cleaning himself, he suddenly realizes that a woman has been standing next to him this entire time. Ming freaks out, but the woman tells him there's no need to be shy since she's going to become his wife soon. Ming has no idea what she's talking about, but Mu explains that her family made a deal with the Bai family, stating that if both of them managed to pass the Spirit Awakening ceremony, Mu would have to marry him and become his cultivation partner. This is the first time Ming's heard about any of this, so Mu asks him if he's not happy with the arrangement. She's honestly surprised he hasn't tried to fondle her yet, since the young master of the Bai family is known to be quite a degenerate. Ming makes up an excuse and says he is just trying to focus on his cultivation, so he doesn't have time for romance, and Mu respects that, so she asks him what cultivation he is currently aiming for. Ming tells her he is going to learn the spirit summoning technique, but from what Mu knows, to cultivate that technique, you first need to condense yin souls to form a refining cord. She asks him if he knows where to buy yin souls, but Ming has no idea, so she takes his arm and invites him to go shopping with her so the two of them can get to know each other better. She takes Ming to the largest cultivation market in their sect, the Gray Market, and Ming is amazed because he has never seen anything like it before. But because Ming is so new to this, he almost immediately gets targeted by a con artist trying to sell him phony talismans. Luckily, Mu saves him before he gets roped into the scheme, but Ming is still completely clueless about how to navigate this market. He accidentally bumps into a giant boar head hanging from a meat shop, and the store owner yells at him for nearly ruining it. Mu asks Ming if he's interested in the meat, but he's more so curious because he didn't know people ate magical beasts. The shop owner explains that eating a magical beast's meat can help you increase your cultivation, but you need to eat close to 50 times the normal amount for there to be any noticeable difference, so Mu tells Ming he doesn't need to buy it. She drags Ming away, but the scams don't end there because Ming soon gets approached by a sleazy con man who tries to trick him into buying a useless rock. This is the final straw for Mu, so she threatens to report the conman to the sect leader and get him kicked out if he doesn't leave immediately. Once the conman is gone, Mu warns Ming to be careful because there are tons of scammers in this market. But there are also a few genuine shops, so she brings Ming to the Wanbao store. The items here can be quite expensive, but the quality is guaranteed, so Ming doesn't have to worry about getting scammed. Ming walks over to the store owner to ask for some yin souls. The shop owner asks if he wants high, medium, or low-grade ones, so Ming asks how much the low grades cost. He is told that the low-grade souls cost 3 spirit stones, and that's way too much money for Ming to spend. He only has 4 stones left for the rest of the month, so he asks the owner if he can get a discount, but discounts aren't allowed here. Mu asks Ming if he doesn't have enough stones to buy the yin soul because she'd gladly lend him the money, but Ming tells her there's no need. He pays for the yin soul and thanks Mu for being his guide, but before leaves, she has a little advice for him. She tells Ming that if he wants to make a high-quality soul refining cord, then he should head over to the sect soul pond and catch a high-grade yin soul for himself. Ming already thought of that, but entering the soul pond requires sect contribution points, and Ming has almost spent all his money already. In that case, Mu tells him that there's a sect mission coming up, and if Ming joins her team and does well, he can earn a lot of contribution points for himself. Ming thanks her for her kindness, and the two agree to meet up tomorrow morning to prepare for the mission together. Ming then takes his leave, and once he is gone, Yu shows up from around the corner and asks Mu for a status update. Mu tells him she didn't find anything new. Yu reminds her that he made an agreement with the Mu family, so she needs to cooperate with his investigation. But she genuinely can't tell if there's anything suspicious about Ba Kongshan. She was betrothed to him, but she had never actually seen or spoken to him before, so this was the first time they'd actually met. If anything, she thinks Yu is the suspicious one because he is going to such great lengths to investigate someone who hasn't caused any trouble. But Yu is still convinced that there's something shady going on with Bai, so he plans to investigate things on his own from now on. The day of the mission finally arrives, so Ming meets up with Mu near the site. He took a look at the mission's requirements on his way here, and since all they need to do is gather materials, he thinks it should be pretty easy. However, Mu tells him missions like this are never as simple as they seem, which is why she brought a little extra help, including Yu, although bringing him wasn't her idea. She introduces Ming to the others, Du, Wu, and Mei, but Ming still wants to know why Yu is here, so Mu explains that he said he wanted to help. Ming isn't in a position to object to her decision, so he decides to just go with it even though he doesn't trust Yu. Now that everyone has met each other, Mu says it's time for them to head into the mountains and begin their mission. It won't be easy to gather the fruit from the mountain, especially since the black butterflies guarding them will swarm and attack as soon as they approach. Luckily, Mu already planned for this, so she pulls out the spirit-attracting powder she brought and asks Wu and Mei to use it to lead the butterflies away. It's a dangerous job, but both of them have speed talismans, so outrunning the butterflies for a while shouldn't be a problem for them. While those two are leading the butterflies away, the rest of them will head up the mountain to collect the blood fruit, and once they are done, they'll meet back here before heading home. Each person will need to gather at least 25 fruit for the team, but any extra fruit can be sold for spirit stones, so it's best to get as much as possible. Ming asks what he should do if he encounters some of those black butterflies, so Yu tells him he can just kill them because the butterflies aren't that strong. They drain small amounts of energy from their surroundings, so they shouldn't be a threat unless he runs into a swarm of them. But with Wu and Mei acting as decoys, that won't happen. Now that everyone is clear on the plan, Wu and Mei fly up to the mountain and begin circling it to draw the attention of the butterflies. And once the butterflies start coming after them, the two fly away as fast as possible. Most of the butterflies are now gone, so everyone else gets moving to gather their fruit and complete the mission. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the mountains, a high-level cultivator named Yi is flying through the mountains on her sword looking for something. A little while later, Ming had managed to pick quite a few blood fruit thanks to the soul-refining rope he made. It may not be high quality, but it is really useful for scaling the mountain. Ming continues gathering all the fruit he comes across, but when he tries moving a boulder, he ends up inadvertently releasing a group of black butterflies, so he now has to fight them off. Luckily, there aren't that many here, so he uses his chain to slash at them and then finishes them off with a fireball. However, just when he thinks he can finally relax, he is suddenly captured by a binding spell you place on him. This particular spell was made to be effective against cultivators, so while he is bound, Ming won't be able to use his spiritual energy at all. Ming asks Yu why he is doing this, so Yu tells him he just has a few questions he wants answered, so he appreciates Ming's cooperation. After all, it would be a shame if Ming were to suddenly go missing out in these mountains, especially since 3Ving cultivators aren't worth much to the sect. First, he asks Ming if he has any connection with Xiaoan Island, but Ming says he has never heard of it before. In that case, Yu asks him how he learned the bone shrinking technique that he used during the tournament because that's something that's only taught on Xiaoan Island. Ming realizes he might have blown his cover by using that technique, so he won't be able to talk his way out of this, but he can't reveal that he really was on Xiaoan Island. He tells Yu that he indeed learned the technique, but he says he just found a manual on the corpse of a fugitive and used that to learn the technique. He starts asking a lot more questions, but all of a sudden, the two of them are attacked by a liquid yin condensation rat beast. This is a monster so powerful that Yu stands no chance, so he immediately runs away, but not before throwing Ming at the rat beast as a distraction. Yu then flies away, and the entire time he is smiling to himself because he finally has a good excuse for Ming's death. Ming is now left alone to face the monster, but no matter what he tries, the rat is simply too quick and powerful for him to fight head-on. Ming gets slammed into a rock, and he realizes he's really going to die here if he doesn't do something soon. So even though he doesn't really have a plan, he's not going down without a fight. He summons his spirit weapon at full strength and charges at the rat, managing to slash it across the torso and cut off its tail. But while he may be able to do damage against it, he is still taking a lot of damage in return, so he won't last much longer. Just then, Yi shows up and she sees Ming struggling against the rat beast, so she sends a rain of lightning swords down to help. This scares the rat off, but that's not a good thing since Yi's goal was to finish it off. She creates a whirlwind in the sky to suck the rat up, but she inadvertently drags Ming up as well, so he gets sent flying through the air. He manages to regain his footing by summoning his Nimbus, but almost immediately after, he gets grabbed by the rat's tongue and is nearly eaten. He realizes that the rat is trying to drink Ming's blood so it can regenerate, but she won't let that happen. So she cuts its tongue off and the rat scampers away in pain. She now has to go hunt it down again, but she's going to need some bait, so she grabs Ming against his will and throws him into the area the rat fled to. The crash landing knocks Ming out, and by the time he finally wakes up, he finds the rat staring straight at him. It launches several spikes at him, so Ming pulls out his shield to defend himself. But just as the spikes are about to make impact, Yi jumps in and uses an artifact to absorb them all. The rat now turns its attention to her and launches more spikes, so she puts up a shield to block them. However, she underestimated how powerful the spikes could be, so one spike manages to break through and nearly hit her beautiful face. This gets her angry, so she locks in and returns fire with dozens of lightning swords, but to her surprise, the rat is still alive, although it's heavily injured now. Yi doesn't want to take any chances here, so she uses one of her secret techniques and brings a giant lightning blade down on the rat. Its body is completely destroyed, but its soul fragments still remain intact, and it'd be bad if it managed to possess a vessel. So Ming tries to stop it from escaping, but the soul fragments are too fast for him to catch up to. Fortunately, he already saw this coming, so she uses her swords to destroy the remnants of the rat's soul and uses her artifact to store the sliced-up rat body. Now that it's over, Ming can see that the difference between him and high-level cultivators like Yi is far greater than he ever could have imagined. He was fighting for his life against that rat, but Yi fought it as if it were a minor inconvenience to her. Speaking of inconveniences, Yi addresses Ming and tells him his fighting skills are pathetic, but he did serve as good bait, so he deserves some kind of reward for his role. She tells him that when she chopped up the rat, some of its body parts fell down into the ravine, so if he is willing to go looking for it, then he is free to keep anything he finds. She then turns around to leave, but before that, she asks Ming to tell her what cultivation he is currently using. Ming explains that he is practicing the ghost spirit technique, but Yi doesn't really believe him because she can tell that his technique is different from the normal ghost technique. She doesn't know what specific cultivation Ming is using, but she tells him that whoever taught him the technique messed up really badly because it has a major flaw. Ming is starting to get worried, so he asks her to tell him what the flaw is, but Yi doesn't see a point in getting involved with his cultivation. So she tells him it's his problem to deal with and flies away. Meanwhile, back at the base of the mountain, Yu has just finished telling everyone about the monster and how it has probably eaten Ming by now. But he leaves out the part about him sacrificing Ming as bait so he could escape on his own. Mu can't believe a monster like that would show up on this mountain since there have never been any reports like that in the past, but she does recall sensing a strong presence a few moments ago, so she assumes a high-level cultivator must have arrived to deal with it. With that said, the others are wondering why Ming wasn't able to escape the rat since his skills should have been more than enough to get away. Unless, of course, someone threw him at the rat as bait, but no one would be sinister enough to do that. Right. Yu speaks up and says he doesn't think Ming made it out alive because while he was fleeing, he saw the rat heading towards Ming, but he definitely had nothing to do with that. Mu is saddened by the thought that Ming might have died, but for now, they need to finish their mission, so she asks everyone to give a tally of all the fruit they gathered so far. Their goal was to gather 100 fruit, but as of right now, they only found 60. So Mu tells everyone that they'll have to go out and gather more so they can meet their quota. And while they're out, everyone should keep an eye out for Ming in case he managed to survive. At the same time, Ming is currently searching through the ravine to find the remaining pieces of the rat, but these don't look very valuable. So he's starting to think he may have gotten scammed on his reward. Just then, he spots a piece of the rat's body that's still moving on the ground, and this looks like it could be worth a lot. But as soon as Ming picks it up, some of the rat's energy flows into his head, and he screams out in pain. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part.